Hello and welcome to the fifth and final day of racing in the digital Swiss 5 as 19 of the very best teams in world cycling get set for a final joust on the virtual roads of Switzerland. Stefan Küng of Team Switzerland scored a sensational cliffhanger victory yesterday, the local favourite overhauling the long-time leader Michael Matthews of Team Sunweb in the final kilometres to take his second victory of the week on a hilly 36-kilometre epic. It's a final mountain assault for the riders today, a 15 kilometres uphill start to the race from Camperio over the Lukmanier Pass, followed by a less demanding gradient before the final 6-kilometre ramp to the finish in Discenti-Cedrun on roads made famous by the Tour de Suisse. Measuring the effort will be key, as the first climb will take its toll, but riders will have to keep something in the tank for that shorter but no less demanding final climb. Well, don't forget you can accompany us during the live action on the Ruvi AR app. Here's how it works. Well, to get the best experience out of watching a race on the Ruvi platform, download the Ruvi AR application to a laptop or smart device and choose the Race tab to find the next digital Swiss 5 race. It's free to download and free to watch each race. Pick the best video resolution and then select the start list for the event. Scroll through the list to see who's riding and their data. Choose your favourite rider or opt to follow the leader as the race unfolds. The menu offers the order of the riders through the various split points in the race. Select the riders while the race is underway, and the key data will help give you the best possible understanding in the world's most exciting online bike racing. 19 teams are in action, of which 15 are World Tour squads, including the Bora Hansgrohe team of Max Schachmann and CCC featuring Giro d'Italia stage winner Fausto Masnada. French superstar Julian Alaphilippe will be one to watch for Deceuninck Quick-Step today, where he'll face, among others, emerging esports star Jimmy Whelan of EF Pro Cycling. Belgium's Tim Wellens is on duty for Lotto Soudal, while Andre Zeitz is among the selection that Matt White sends into battle for Mitchelton Scott.
Yeah, look, we are slightly disadvantaged. We've got a big group of our guys at altitude, and if you do the numbers, the guys who are above 1,500 metres, 1,500 metres to 2,000 metres, quite significantly disadvantaged because you just can't put out the same power at 2,000 metres as that you can at sea level. But look, we're including everybody in this, and we want to be competitive, but at the same time, there's a lot of guys who are in Andorra who wanted to have a race, and you've seen some of those over the last couple of days.
Domenico Pozzovivo and Wout Poels are climbing stars of different statures for NTT Pro Cycling and Team Bahrain respectively. Race 1 winner Rohan Dennis is back for Team Ineos, as is Race 3 winner Nicolas Roche and his Team Sunweb teammate Chris Hamilton.
Tactics don't really have to come too much into it, because it's if you think you can hold the pace, just go for it, and if you blow, you blow it, and you pay the price for it at the end. But I mean, it's not like here it's not as consequential as in a normal race. You can roll to the finish line and step off and be on your couch in a couple of minutes, so it's not so bad. But I think that's why you can just take as much risk as you want with your pacing and see what happens.
Trek Segafredo have brought out the big guns for the final day in the form of multi-Grand Tour winner Vincenzo Nibali and Dutch climbing star Bauke Mollema. And finally, the Swiss national squad can call on AG Tour's Matthias Frank, and all three Swiss riders will know these roads better than most. The riders are pretty familiar with how things work on the virtual roads of Switzerland. The final push now, 36 kilometres away. We're inside 1 minute to the start of this final day of racing in the digital Swiss 5. Alex Dowsett is virtually alongside me to run the rule over the riders again throughout the day. And Alex, this is again a mouth-watering prospect, one for the climbers perhaps?
Yeah, it is today, but that long downhill could prove crucial. We saw yesterday a tantalisingly close finish with Küng and Matthews because of that long stretch of downhill at the end.
Yeah, we'll just see how that one's going to play in and affect the play. But certainly it is an interesting course as we're inside the final 10 seconds. Make that 5 seconds to go. 57 riders representing 19 teams set to get underway. They're thrashing away. Matthias Frank is in studio. 1 or 2 riders left standing as they get underway. We've got 16 riders who are set fair to do battle. Who is going to take the victory today? Nicholas Roche getting the win a couple of days ago. All eyes, I think, are going to be on Rowan Dennis, but problems for Jack Haig, who was one of my little tips, actually. He's been in great form, but clearly has got a problem with his Wi-Fi connection left. I think could have been David Gaudu as well, who was suffering a little bit in terms of getting away and Wi-Fi connection. Michał Kwiatkowski is towards the pointy end in the early stages. Wout Poels, though, has pulled out an immediate advantage. The Dutch climber, a beanpole climber, you might call him, but he was 40th on day one, and perhaps he's learned a little bit that a good start is in many respects half the battle. It was an absolutely charging getaway from Michael Matthews yesterday. Didn't ultimately result in victory, but for Matthews and others, I think getting a really, really big start is important.
Yeah, yesterday, you know, with how we saw it play out with Matthews versus Stefan Kung, the climbers, if they've watched it, will know that they have to make all of their ground up in the first third of this race up to that top of that summit, because the watts per kilo won't help them on the downhill, and the downhill becomes a pure power fight. So whoever's got the biggest numbers, regardless of their size or weight, will move forward. So you see Zakarin had a much more controlled start in stage 3. And rode his way up to onto the podium, but here he's put himself in the front right away and got quite a group now at the start here. Everyone just sort of clubbed together, which we haven't seen on any of the stages so far.
With one obvious exception, Jimmy Whelan. This is what he did on day one. He ultimately converted that into a third-place finish for a rider of his ability, emerging stature, you might say, on the world stage. The 23-year-old Australian Jimmy Whelan's decided to go on and hit out. Did a similar thing, indeed, on day 3 as well, and ultimately faded significantly, but he knows how to play this virtual e-racing game. Plays it better than most. The EF Pro Cycling rider, in that familiar jogging style, not afraid to get out of the saddle on the turbo trainer, and has opened up an advantage of more than 23, 24 meters at the moment over the man who finished second on day 3, Ilnur Zakarin of CCC team. Gave us some fantastic images on social media of the sheer torture, the hell that was visited upon him. Said he never wanted to do it again. Here he is a couple of days later. He's back in the fold and running in second place. Max Schachmann is sitting in third place for Bora Hansgrohe, Ben Gaster, Jai Hindley. Nicholas Roche, second and a first place already, is in sixth place for Team Sunweb. Vingegaard for Team Jumbo-Visma. Guglielmi from the Groupama FDJ squad is making his debut today and is finally poised and in a nice position as we get a sight of the riders that are thrashing away. Schachmann's well placed in his German national champion shirt. What about Julian Alaphilippe, the hero of last summer? For Tour de France glory, he's going to have to be delayed somewhat this year, but he's making his appearance in the Digital Swiss 5, the disappointing quick-step superstar, 27-year-old Frenchman, 4 stage wins in the Tour de France in his career. Will he be able to take the win today? Max Schachmann, as I've mentioned, is the national champion of Germany, the 26-year-old, and already in fine form this year. Took the win in Paris-Nice at the beginning of the year. Have a conversation in the early stage. He was going to be able to do that after 36 kilometers. We saw Stefan Kung yesterday. Well, I won't say chatting away, but able to manage a sentence here and there in the early stages. But he certainly couldn't at the end. That terrific finale with himself and Michael Matthews going toe-to-toe. There's Fausto Masnada, great acquisition for the CCC squad. He's come across from Androni Giocattoli. 2 stage wins in his Giro d'Italia career. Great win last year. Lilian Calmjean for the Total Direct Energy squad is thrashing away in France, I presume. And he's left the doors closed and stayed indoors. Not everyone's doing that. There's Vincenzo Nibali. The acquisition from, he's now 34 years of age. Make that 35 in actual fact. The Sicilian. The only man racing has won all 3 Grand Tours. And Vincenzo Nibali looking calm and in control of his effort at the moment. Similarly, Jimmy Whelan, with that out of the saddle style. How does he manage it? But this is his approach, and he's able to stay out of the saddle for sustained periods of time. It's impressive stuff, Alex.
Well, maybe he's taking his saddle off to save weight, because there are no UCI rules here on your bike's dimensions or anything. And maybe taking the saddle off, Jimmy knows that he performs best without the saddle, so he's forcing that himself.
Well, he can't get back in it if it's not there. EROS CAPECCHI, his Vuelta stage win coming several years ago now. He's domestique with the Team Bahrain McLaren squad. There's Nico Roche at the apartment in Monaco, but out of the balcony today. Second and first place finishes, and the Team Sunweb squad are really hooked up this week. They've got themselves very organised. Chris Hamilton with a couple of fourth place finishes on days 1 and 3. This Roche, as I mentioned, that second and first place finish. They've got Jai Hindley on their of their trio as well, 23-year-old Aussie. Meanwhile, Nathan Brown, well, he's non-finisher on day 1.
Looks like he's giving himself some words of encouragement.
Yeah,
Great to himself for not going faster.
Excellent presentation of tonsorial treatment. Sebastian Reichenbach, Swiss rider, manages a wave towards adoring fans. The 30-year-old Swiss rider, 44th on day 1. Nick Schultz glancing at the camera, aware he's on screen, I think. But again, as this starts to really grip at the back end, I think we'll see Nick Schultz won't be able to handle it. Another man wearing a cap.
I don't know if the whole cap thing is it's a fashion thing, or maybe to further represent the sponsors. But in terms, one of the big challenges of B racing is shifting heat. So a fan is crucial, and I think given the choice, a lot of riders wouldn't be wearing their team jerseys. But this is an opportunity that we don't have in Cycling to represent our sponsors. So in most of the team jerseys that each team will have, there'll be a summer version which is super lightweight and sort of targeted at sort of getting the sweat away from your body as quickly as possible, so it won't be causing them too much discomfort. But you can see here Cheryl has his zip undone as far as possible, and that will be just pure heat management.
Michael Charel with the sun visor approach. It's peak up. I mean, of course, now in the virtual e-racing, we're seeing how riders are wearing their casquettes. It's all desperately important, whether you have peak up to the front, peak down to the front, or peak up at the back. It's all critical stuff, and of course, it's not normally stuff that we see when they have helmets on. But no helmet or hat indeed for Tim Wellens. The Belgian Classics rider is certainly in a bit of pain at the moment, struggling to keep up with this man, the leader of the bike race at the moment. Just over 8 minutes in, and Jimmy Whelan has a 125 metres advantage over Max Schachmann. Ilnur Zakarin staying well in touch at 123. Rowan Dennis won about another 20-30 metres behind Zakarin. Jai Hindley, first day of racing for him for the Team Sunweb squad, but clearly he's up for it. His teammate Nico Roche just behind. Schultz from Michelin Scott is sitting 72 metres further adrift from Nicolas Roche at the moment, but well placed in the top 10. Jonas Vingegaard, Domenico Pozzoviva, Ben Gaspar, the Luxembourg rider for AG Tour La Mondiale, is in 10th position. Cavagna, O'Connor, Hamilton, Badalati, and the rest. Still a large group in contention, but it's starting to split up now a little bit on this climb, and Rowan Dennis and his group with Schachmann, Zakarin, they've put a little bit of daylight into the next group led by Nicolas Roche.
I think Jimmy and Zakarin really need to focus on putting as much daylight between themselves and Rowan as possible on this first climb, because as soon as we hit the downhill, Rowan's raw power is going to shine through, and they're going to struggle to keep up with him, and they'll be leaving it until the last 4K to try and peg him back. So I think for Jimmy and Zach, now's the time to try and dig in. Rowan will be he's a absolute master of pacing and effort. You can see on screen he rarely looks like he's trying, but he will be. He'll be in the hurt locker
Matthias
there.
Frank schon ziemlich stark am Schnaufen, am Schwitzen.
Well, it's hard enough to do this without being forced to smile and chat while you're doing it. Matthias Frank is somehow managing it. Swiss national team rider. It's been somewhat chastening experience for him so far, but he's enjoying the efforts. Non-starter on day 1, managed 21st on day 3 and out of the saddle. Second in the Tour de Suisse back in 2014. He's currently running in 19th position in the studio and pacing his effort. Pretty useful climber in his day. Matthias Frank would certainly like some more days. There's the situation with Matthias Frank back in 19th position. Meanwhile, the leader is Jimmy Whelan. Just under 50 meters advantage. That's coming down. Ilnur Zakarin, Rowan Dennis, Max Schachmann getting on terms here. And Jai Hindley and Nicolas Roche leading the group behind. That includes Domenico Pozzovivo, Jonas Vingegaard. And then a little bit of a separation back to Nick Schultz, Chris Hamilton, Ben O'Connor. But already huge gaps starting to appear. It's a really, really brutal way to start this race, isn't it? At the bottom of a climb.
This kind of start in real world races is the stuff that sends shivers up my spine. When you're climbing straight out of the blocks, you know you're going to be on the limit and just trying to hang in. Whereas you've got the whippets up the front attacking and easing off and attacking again, trying to form a breakaway and shake the race up. It's for us bigger guys. These days are the ones in the Grand Tours that you fear. Ones that you least look forward to, and the ones that can have the potential to end your stage race just with, if you get dispatched early on, you've got a time cut to contend with. Of course, that's not the case here, but even so, it doesn't make it any less easy. The turbo trainers that the guys here are using, the resistances will be up high to replicate what grade, the 9% gradient that they're on here, and that'll, and as soon as they get over the top, and that's it's quite torquey, so you have to focus hard on keeping the pedals turning over. It really can bog you down, whereas once you're on the downhill, the resistance eases off and you can spin up a bigger gear and you just get a bit more momentum, and it's not easier, but it feels nicer. I don't know a technical way to put it feels nicer. I don't know a technical way to say that, but you seem to have more momentum. There's on a climb, you're just grinding away.
And of course, this is the 5th day of racing, and for many of these riders, they'll be in their 3rd day. I think they've mixed and matched their rosters around a little bit, but plenty of riders in this are in their 3rd day of racing this week. And while it's not, you're not out there doing 5-6 hours, it's still incredibly intense effort, and there'll be a few tender legs in there.
This is unfamiliar territory for just about every rider. It is very rare that we'll do an hour threshold, and it's very rare that we'll do that on a turbo trainer. And the turbo trainer, like how static it is and how fixed the effort is, and there's no micro rest, there's no corners to brake for, there's no resting in the bunch because there is no drafting in this event. Just that toll on the body is going to be huge. It's really going to catch up with these guys if they haven't fueled properly for this race, if they haven't recovered, if they raced yesterday. It's going to bite them hard, especially in the second half of this.
Well, it could be biting Jimmy Whelan hard a little bit at the moment, because Rowan Dennis has just replaced him at the head of the standings. He comes alongside the man in pink, the EF Education first pro, or EF Pro Racing they call it these days, of Team Ineos. In the colours of Team Ineos for the first time this year is Rowan Dennis. What an acquisition for them, who's had a colourful few years, but what an amazing talent he is. And Rowan Dennis has now moved up and into the lead. Similar sort of performance from which we saw from him on day 1, when he played himself in for the first couple of kilometres, but it really wasn't very long before he was in the lead of the race and then just cruised away to victory. It was a long, long way to go yet. We saw what happened yesterday. Michael Matthews getting what looked at one stage to be a race-winning advantage, and Stefan Kung working his way up from behind. So there are different approaches to this. But Rowan Dennis has gone with Route 1. Hunted up the field from early days, and he's got his advantage now over Jimmy Whelan. Max Schachmann sitting in third place, the German rider. And there's the advantage, there's the lead, and all the riders are suffering out there. We had a little bit of a conversation earlier on with Magnus Kort of EF Pro Cycling. He's seeing his man Jimmy Whelan up front at the moment, but had a bit of a chat with Magnus about just how difficult this racing is.
Yeah, they've been doing really great, my teammates, and I was a little bit sad yesterday that I didn't do better when I looked at what results they came up with on the first three stages, but yeah, it is what it is. I couldn't change much.
So what have you learned from the experience? What would you change today? I mean, how do you go about racing in the Digital Swiss 5?
Yeah, now I've learned more. Yesterday I saw how much power I was able to produce over 50 minutes, and after a long break without racing, and also as bike riders you almost never go all out for 1 hour. I didn't really have any idea what I could produce, and so now I can see what I can produce, and I can make a better pacing strategy for the race.
Magnus Kort is down in 40th position at the moment. Perhaps not really a course for him. 2 times a stage winner in the Vuelta a España, and a stage winner, of course, in the Tour de France a couple of years ago. Magnus Kort, or Magnus Kort Nielsen, as more correctly known. 27-year-old Dane, a very personable man, but he's handing it over to his climbing superstar and e-racing advocate Jimmy Whelan to do the work for EF Pro Cycling today.
I think Magnus there's being quite hard on himself. This platform is not. It's very different to real racing. It's and you can't discredit any performances on here, like you wouldn't discredit any performances in like the Tour de Suisse. But some guys are absolute powerhouses, and that's why they do well. We saw with Stefan Kung and Rohan, just their sheer power output is hugely advantageous to them, and that performs well on online racing, where strategy isn't quite so important. But then Magnus he's a racer. He wins by his sort of strategy, his sprint, and the sprint on this platform as it is right now really is not of much use. As the riders have said, this is a pure threshold effort. It's 1 hour of just going full, and it's really not easy. It's a battle of the mind as well. And again, some riders thrive on having that up close racing, banging handlebars and trying to outbrake each other into corners. And some riders just are not interested in getting on the turbo trainer and riding as hard as they can for an hour. And it's kind of that's a mental thing, and that's again, some of the best riders in the world would not perform very well on online platforms at all. And we'll see riders who are performing here whose real world Palmares don't match up. And like I said, it's not to discredit any of the performances. We're seeing these are world-class numbers from all the riders, especially those in the top 10. And it's just it's different. Cycling is full of sub-sports. We've got there's road, time trial, track, cyclocross, cycle speedway, BMX, mountain biking, and this online racing is becoming another sub-sport of an already diverse sport of cycling.
Yeah, it's horses for courses, and you get different approaches, different levels of interest, and different levels of aptitude, indeed, for the different types of the different sub genres, as you mentioned in cycling. It's been a great hit out, hasn't it? The 5 days of racing, never intended to be a replacement for the Tour de Suisse. Some people are calling it the virtual Tour de Suisse, but what are the next steps for this style of racing? Is there, where do you see the developments coming in this type of racing out?
I think there's a future for it, and obviously this year with the current climate, it's we're very lucky to have this platform to do any form of racing, because it'd be easy to just sit back and have months of nothing. But this platform is an opportunity for sponsors to be showcased, for riders to get their competitive fix, for different riders to show themselves. It's a tough year for everyone. Riders that are in contract, riders that are in teams that may be struggling, and so we have an opportunity here to show off, or to just do some bike racing, and I think it's great. The Tour de Suisse, unfortunately, is a race that hasn't been, and I'm talking about the real world Tour de Suisse, it's a race that has been cancelled, and that's not postponed. Like, the Tour de Suisse will not run this year, so if we can do a virtual Tour de Suisse as some way of salvaging the loss, then I think that's only a good thing, and I think all the riders would agree with that something is better than nothing. And actually what we're seeing here is some competitive racing. Yesterday's finish was one of the most exciting things I've seen in a long time, and I think we can go back, feedback on the racing, and it can only get better from here.
Absolutely. I know there are plenty of developments in the pipeline. There's talk perhaps of this particular platform introducing drafting in the future. I think it's been fascinating to see without drafting, actually, as it's created a new subgenre of esports indeed, as well as cycling in its own right. But that would certainly bring it more in line with real world racing, and perhaps introducing the elements and add tactics and change the way the approach of teams if there was a general classification, if it was day upon day. So let's think about that for the future. Right now we're focusing on the final day of the Digital Swiss 5 with the leader out front at the moment, Rohan Dennis, opening up an 80-meter advantage over Max Schachmann. We focus on the effort and the struggles of Matthias Frank in studio with our colleagues on Swiss television. They've managed to inveigle the Swiss star to demonstrate his abilities from the relative comfort of their studios, while Team Ineos' Rohan Dennis continues to tap out a searing rhythm. It's now approaching 32 kilometers per hour on this Luc Manier pass. It's an absolute beast, 15 kilometers long, and it's quite an effort, quite a start to the day's racing, as Schachmann now slips over 100 meters behind, and Rohan Dennis starts to pick up the descent as the gradient eases.
Let's say hypothetically we start racing consecutive days on this. A team selects 3 riders to do a tour. That will bring a whole new, and if the races are this length, which I think is great because of the nature of the effort. I don't think longer races than this are necessary. I think the distances are perfect for the online racing. It's going to bring a whole bunch of headaches for the rider support teams on how to cope with the day-to-day recovery from these races. Of course, this isn't, all these riders are at home, so there's no massage, there's no chef, there's no mechanics, so teams will be having to look after their riders remotely, which is which will really make them think, and it could not level the playing field, but you could see some different teams getting it more right than other teams because it's so unfamiliar. Cycling is a very old sport where every team is very set in their ways. This is how you do recovery from racing, with massage, with the food, the recovery drinks and everything. But this brings a whole bunch of headaches where it's like, well, actually, how does that rider know? And it comes down to the rider as well. Does the rider know how to get himself into the best shape possible for the next day after the enormous effort of today? And I think some riders would really slip up in thinking, oh, this is just an hour, and it's just an hour tomorrow. But you can tear yourself apart in 20 minutes to the point where we really feel it next day. So I think if we do end up with a full-blown stage race, it's going to be fascinating as a race it's like a stage race. It's going to be fascinating, the overall result, and it's going to be fascinating each day.
Yes, I mean, the very idea of 5 or maybe even 9 time trials in a row is a daunting one. Have you ever done that? I don't think too many people, even in Britain, where they absolutely adore time trials, have ever actually done 9 days in a row or 5 days in a row.
I've done plenty of 2 days in a row TTs, and you definitely feel, even if the first day is just a 10 miler, 16k, it's a 20-minute effort, hopefully less. You don't half feel it the next day. And yeah, these guys are going that hard. I will say though, Max Schachmann he doesn't look comfortable, but he looks like he's measuring his effort well, and he'll be keeping an eye on that distance to Rohan and trying to make sure it's manageable. But to be honest, if Rohan keeps up this pace, I can't see anyone making inroads. Well, I can't see anyone in that top 10 making inroads to him on the downhill after we saw things play out yesterday. With some riders are going to be suited to how this platform works and how the power that they deliver gets input into it, and some riders are going to struggle, and that's the nature of it. It's a different form of racing. It's like throwing Mathieu van der Poel straight onto the track. You wouldn't expect him to be winning from the outset. You'll find some other riders who wouldn't be able to live with him on a cyclocross course having the measure of him.
Yes, I think even Rohan Dennis has probably accumulated some knowledge and experience and on how to play his tactics from day one, because he was making big efforts on the descent on day one when he even we had hit that 72 kilometer maximum speed. Worth knowing that it is a 72 kilometer maximum speed on the descent, so no matter how hard you pedal, you've got to be aware of that. So an opportunity perhaps for a little bit of a recovery, take a gel, take a drink as they hit the descent as it comes. And Rohan Dennis is in good shape at the moment, an advantage of over 100 meters. JULIAN ALAPHILIPPE, I can tell you, is down in 43rd position. He's pumping out 4.5 watts per kilo at the moment. Not world-class numbers, but a lot of riders around him are putting out similar stuff. And JULIAN ALAPHILIPPE, Tour de France star last year, playing his way into the world of virtual cycling via the digital Swiss 5. Well, we've got riders participating today who are spread across at least 22 countries. Race has been shown live on television in more than 30 countries, and we've been following and catching up with a lot of what's been happening on the social media channels.
Time to ride. We're already on the start line, but towel to match the bike, some drink mix, 1 pan, 2 pans. Go, go, go!
Oh, that tree isn't getting any closer.
Oh, Victor's suffering. Really suffering. Victor is one of the riders in the pro peloton I admire the most, because he just gives it everything, and he doesn't ever hold anything back either.
That's I think around 5k to go. Stefan was really closing in, so I tried to keep the pressure on, see if he would crack. Unfortunately, he didn't. He caught me with around 2k to go. Yeah, with these TT guys, they know their power. They need to hold to the finish, and they know how to sustain that power.
I think everyone needed a cool down after that one yesterday. Great reaction from Michael Matthews. Glorious bid, ultimately ending in glorious failure, but superb second place finish from the man from Team Sunweb yesterday. Stefan Kung not involved today. Neither of those two riders are, but I can tell you that Jai Hindley and Nicholas Roche certainly are. They are sitting in 4th and 5th places at the moment. Hindley in 5th, Roche in 4th. They've got, well, around about 300 metres to make up if they're going to get on terms with the leader, Rohan Dennis. And Roche looks like he's really suffering. He's down in Monaco at the moment. Second and first place finishes already this week. But has he got the legs to drag himself closer to the runaway leader at the moment? Dennis with that 200-metre advantage over Jonas Vingegaard of Team Jumbo-Visma. He's moved up and into second position. And Nicolas Roche, 35-year-old Irishman, 2 stage wins in the Vuelta a España in his time. What can he do about getting on terms with multi-Grand Tour stage winner Rohan Dennis, the world time trial champion, second overall in the Tour de Suisse in 2019 when he showed that he was more than just a time trialist, to some superb climbing performances, and really the only man to get within nodding, touching distance of Egan Bernal on that occasion. Bernal now his teammate at Team Ineos. What a powerful combination. Well, Rohan Dennis is racing for his own glory today, and the likes of Jonas Vingegaard of Team Jumbo-Visma, not, as things currently stand, able to do anything about the progress of the flying Aussie. Max Schachmann, pick up the images from the German National Road Race champion, just slipped behind the camera, and he is doing a solid job though, isn't he? He is at, what, 230 odd metres behind Rohan Dennis in the current standings. And what can any of these riders do about getting on terms with Dennis? It's going to be quite an ask.
Rohan's just setting that pace. He knows best. He knows what power to sit on. I'd imagine we heard the other day from Nico Roche that when he took the lead, he was just keeping an eye on the rider Ineos Zakarin and trying to make sure he matches Zakarin's pace and just kept him at bay. Rohan, I can't imagine would do that, to be honest. Rohan will be in his own little world, riding at his own pace. And if he does look up at the gap to second and third, he'll only be wanting to make that bigger as well. If it's 300, he'll be like, well, let's try and double that. Is I think the sort of attitude Rohan will take to this race, and the gap he has now, he won't be satisfied with just keeping it. He'll want to really display a show of force, which he is. And this descent will be really interesting, I think, to see how he approaches that. Whether he takes a breather or whether he just lights it up and gets it up to that 72 km/h limit and then just maintains it.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see, will we get some cameras to give us a demonstration of just how these riders have an opportunity to take that little micro recovery. Will it be a case of Rohan Dennis holding what he has through the round about 15 kilometres of descending, 15 kilometres up to the top of the fearsome Lukmanier Pass, and now they're across the sort of little plateau at the top and now plunging down the other side. The speed's rising, I can tell you, around about 62, 65 kilometres an hour for Rohan Dennis as he winds it up and approaches that virtual maximum speed of 72 kilometres an hour. Max Schachmann over 300 metres behind now as Rohan Dennis stretches the elastic by hitting the descent first. Vingegaard within touching distance of second position at the moment, and a superb effort indeed. A great performance from the young Danish rider. Nicolas Roche trying to improve upon his fourth place at the moment himself, and his young Australian teammate Jai Hindley started the season in superb form. A couple of stage wins on home soil in the Jayco Herald Sun Tour for Jai Hindley, demonstrating that he had wintered well, or summered, as it's probably a better way of describing it for the Aussie riders. And Hindley has continued and retained that good form into this fifth of the Digital Swiss 5 races, which represents his debut in the series. Domenico Pozzovivo, the rocket Italian rider, many times a top 6 finisher in the Giro d'Italia, is currently sitting in 6th position for NTT Pro Cycling. 37 years young now and a former Tour de Suisse stage winner. Pozzovivo always brings his A game to Swiss roads. He's ahead of the man who finished second on day 3, Ilnur Zakarin, for the CCC squad, still thereabouts, and Zakarin played a similar role, I think, on day 3, didn't he? A similar tactic. He decided to keep his powder as dry as he possibly could in the early stages of the event, and then came with a late surge. He was able to convert into second position. Chris Hamilton, 4th twice already in the series. running in 8th place for Team Sunweb. All 3 of their riders in the top 8. Great effort from them. And a number of Aussies indeed. We've got 6 Aussies in the top 11 at the moment. Chris Hamilton running 8th, Ben O'Connor in 9th. James Sweenan has slipped down into 10th place. Nick Schultz from Mitchell & Scott is just outside the top 10 at the moment. And an Aussie at the head of affairs, it's Rohan Dennis at the top of the standings at the moment. We scroll down the order and try and pick up on some of the riders a little bit further back. And among them, where Wout Poels is. We had a chance to chat to the Dutch star a little bit earlier, just before the start of the race, and asked him what he thought already, having experienced this platform a little bit earlier in the week.
The first stage was pretty hard, lots of climbing, and so hopefully today I do a little bit better. So yeah, I always look forward. I mean, it's nice to do something and see some other riders in the virtual world. So yeah, look forward.
And what did you learn from the experience? What are the take-homes, and what should we be looking out for today as we watch you guys racing?
The thing is that you really have to pace yourself. It's almost like a TT, because you have no drafting and other things like the benefits where you have normally with riding in a peloton. So it's really a fight man against man. So I think the one today is a little bit longer than my first stage. So yeah, I have to be careful with that you don't start too quick.
And will the extra distance be to your advantage, to your assistance?
I hope so. Normally I quite like longer races, but yeah, nowadays what is normal, of course. But yeah, I think it's better for me.
As well, Foles, who's certainly pacing his effort at the moment. He's actually way back in 49th position and quite a way behind. I suspect he could conceivably have had one of those little electronicals that he's suffering with some Wi-Fi dropout. Anyway, the Bahrain McLaren rider who arrived into the season with high hopes indeed. New team, new hopes, but unfortunately hasn't really been able to display his ability just yet out on the roads. But he does have an opportunity to race today in the final event in the Digital Swiss 5 as we catch up with Chris Hamilton running in 8th place, the 3rd of the Team Sunweb riders on the road at the moment. His teammates flying ahead, but decent effort from Chris Hamilton. We heard from at the top of the show. An Australian rider who's making a name for himself this week, 24 years of age, 6th on general classification of the Tour Down Under in 2019, demonstrating that he's got some talent, some ability, and it's developing into World Tour racing. His fellow countryman Rohan Dennis is absolutely flying at the moment. 475 meters the advantage, and he's nudging up around that maximum speed of 72 kilometers an hour. So Rohan Dennis is tapping at a rhythm, I think, that is allowing him to just ease back, recover ever so slightly. Similarly, Max Schachmann now hitting the buffers at 72 kilometers an hour. Nicholas Roche up into 3rd place ahead of Vingegaard and moving up the order and within touching distance of Schachmann. So it's quite a scrap for 2nd place at the moment. Rohan Dennis has a very, very strong advantage. And the descent, similar in distance to the climb. What went up has to come down. So about 15k to the bottom of the hill.
Of course, similar in distance, but much shorter in time, just with the speed difference. But I think the riders will be quite thankful for the 72 kilometre an hour limit, just to take little bits of rest in what is a really, really hard effort. And yeah, we're seeing Wout and Julian further down the rankings, and there's, I think, in Julian's defence, he's a rider that thrives on putting in accelerations that just other riders cannot match, and that's how he wins everything he does. He's a very punchy rider, which just currently is not suited to this platform at all. So he'll be this will be quite out of his comfort zone. riders have good and bad days as well, and with this kind of effort, and I know from a time trial, and in a time trial you have so much more to think about than these guys do here. In a time trial you're pushing yourself so hard, you're having to put yourself into a world of hurt that is really quite unpleasant, and if you know you're on a bad day, it's difficult to put yourself into that level of hurt where you know whatever you do, it's just not going to happen, and you know you're not going to come away with a good result. So I think it's Julian just jumping off. The beauty of the downhill on this is you can jump off and change TV channels.
Was he switching to Netflix, or
maybe? I heard Ozark's the biggest thing at the moment. But we're going back to the effort that these guys are having to put in. If they know they're on a bad day, then it will be very tough mentally for them to commit to going absolutely leaving everything out there, because they know their everything today just isn't going to be on terms with what they know they could do on a good day. So I think that's why I see some big gaps between the front and the back is riders who are fully committed and know they're on a good day for a good result, and riders that are not and willing to park it for the next opportunity.
Yeah, if it's not going to happen, it really is tough to recover, isn't it? And at the moment, Julian Alaphilippe's back in 48th position, so probably does have a second or two to grab the remote control and jump back on the bike. Vincenzo Nibali, for those interested in how the Shark of Messina is getting on, is currently running in 33rd place for Trek Segafredo. And Bauke Mollema, his teammate, in 29th position as things currently stand. So a couple of big names who are, well, finding their way into finding their feet somewhat in Digital Swiss 5 racing. There are others that have a little bit of experience and know exactly what's required. And Rohan Dennis charging along and into the lead. The positions, the finishing order indeed from day one, currently mirrored with Nicholas Roche sitting in second position with just over 400 meters to make up, albeit we still very much are on that descent. There's Julian Alaphilippe back into the fray. Managed to find the right channel. He's got the sounds just the way he'd like them, and he's out of the saddle to try and pump those pedals and improve on his current 48th position in the bike race. Max SCHACHMANN is going altogether better, and I wonder if he might just be calling for a coffee. Might be a good time to get some sustenance. Max SCHACHMANN is in third position. Fine effort at the moment, albeit he's got about 50-60 meters to make up on Nicholas Roche on the descent. Jonas Vingegaard currently running in fourth, Hindley in fifth for Team Sunweb. Ilnur Zakarin starting to move up a little bit now. He's up into sixth position ahead of Chris Hamilton, and Domenico Pozzovivo, is he struggling on the descent perhaps? I'm sure he's not having any difficulty steering around the corners. He's back in 8th place for NTT Pro Cycling. Ben O'Connor, Nick Schultz, Matthias Frank and Jimmy Whelan currently back in 12th place. Problems, I suspect, for Lilian Camjean. For Vincenzo Nibali, tapping out a steady rhythm, but back in 33rd as things currently stand.
I think for Lilian there, maybe not so much a problem, but just simply he's picked it up again. He's on the downhill, so he's taken that opportunity to rest as much as he possibly can. When we saw Julian hop off the bike before, again, taking that opportunity is quite a unique thing to be mid-race and just to be able to just stop and take it all in. I think in terms of battles towards the finish, I think it's going to be an interesting one between Roche and SCHACHMANN. And I wouldn't know who to put my money on here. Roche, obviously, he's had some strong performances in this Digital Swiss series so far, and SCHACHMANN is, I believe this is his first appearance, so fresher. And sometimes it comes down to the rider's environment. I think the Germans can be outside training. I don't think that's the case in Monaco. So some guy, but then Nicholas Roche has been putting in some fairly monstrous hours on the turbo trainer. And Eros CAPECCI just oblivious maybe to the camera.
Yeah, so I don't think that's product placement. I think very much it's just plunked the bottle of water there. Oh, Nico's suffering a little bit. He's has some impressive gurning going on. He really knows how to suffer more than most, and we've seen this face, haven't we? been a while since he's ridden GC, General Classification, in the Grand Tours. He did it at the outset of his career when he was with various French teams, but he moved over to become something of a super domestique, initially with Saxo Bank, and then, of course, moving over to Team Sky when he was part of Tour de France winning teams, and then now, these days, plying his trade with Team Sunweb. And he's engaged in quite the scrap now with the German rider, German national champion, Max Schachmann, an emerging talent, 26-year-old German. GC winner, as I said, in Paris-Nice earlier this year, stage win in the Giro in 2018, national champion, and definitely a potential GC threat in any of the Grand Tours in the coming years. Tim Wellens thinks less about the Grand Tours in terms of winning them overall, but you would imagine that this style of an effort, if the course is absolutely right, might suit a rider of his caliber and his ability. Nick Schultz is going pretty well today. He's in 10th position, in the top 10 for the Mitchelton Scott squad, but it's Rohan Dennis, his fellow countryman, who's runaway leader at the moment. Absolutely flying along, just over 500 meters his advantage. So when they get to the bottom of the descent and that final ramp up to the finish line, which is about 6 kilometers long, then we'll see what Rohan Dennis has got left in the tank. As he cruises through the tunnel, still to reach that final climb, his pace across the virtual tarmac. Well, pretty much all of the leading riders in the top 10 are nudging up against that 72 kilometer an hour maximum. Important to keep it there, of course, as well. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. Sorry, you can see Rohan there is measuring his effort on that speed limit. As soon as it's just keeping it on there, and as the minute is on 72k an hour, he just knocks off the power and takes that rest, which is it's smart, and it comes from knowing the intricacies and the nuances of how this platform works and how to best measure your effort onto it.
Yes, you need to keep it right welded against 72, because if it drops back to 71 or 70, there's, that's a few centimeters, a meter, another meter, and it's potentially could be given away a little bit here and there. But by the same token, you don't want to be putting out an effort that's the equivalent of 80, 90 kilometers an hour, making huge efforts just to try and keep it on the speed limit, because you're not actually, getting the benefit of it. You're not getting an extra 10 kilometers an hour across the virtual road surface. So it is a fine art, isn't it? The gap is just nudging down below 500 meters for the first time in a while, as Rohan Dennis hits a little bit of a ramp and hits it before Nicholas Roche. So Roche still on the descent, and it's the road starting to rise ever so slightly, or just beginning to, the hint of it just about to start for Rohan Dennis.
I think this battle between Roche and Schachmann could be good. They're very similar riders. They're not big, they're not small though either. They're powerful. They both climb extremely well. Roche has the advantage at the moment, but we saw on the videos he is really in a hurt locker even at the end of this downhill. Schachmann, I think he just looks like he's a little bit more controlled. So this final 6k climb is going to be crucial. But all Roche has to do, he's got the experience, is measure his effort against Schachmann, which you say all that he needs to do. He needs to make sure he's got that in the locker, because if Schachmann's going full, then that's a pretty nasty pace to try and hang on to.
Yeah, the final climb over 6 kilometers, I can tell you, it goes up in a series of ramps, and Rohan Dennis is on it now, as you can see. So his advantage over Nicholas Roche will inevitably shrink as Roche continues to plunge down the hill at a pace. But as I say, that Roche's his pace has slowed now, so he's hit the bottom of that final climb to the finish of this fifth day of racing in the Digital Swiss 5. And as I mentioned, there's a couple of ramps. We've got about a half a kilometer up, then it plateaus for a couple of 100 meters, then ramps up again, and then another little level section within sight of the flag inside the final kilometer, another little flat section. So it's up in a series of ramps. Might be a little bit of an opportunity to gain for those that have different power to weight ratio, different weights, so we could see a little bit of a fluctuation through the final 6 kilometers. The advantage for Rohan Dennis sitting at around about 200 meters. It's a strong advantage, but is it a winning one? Well, we're going to find out. This could be another interesting conclusion, because at the moment Rohan Dennis is Going very well indeed. He hits that little plateau actually. His speed goes up to 42 kilometers an hour, just on that little level section, which Roche has yet to reach. So a big gain for Rohan Dennis in the meterage. And that sort of gives you a sense of the sort of concertina nature of this final hill.
Of course, all the riders running turbo trainers on their smart trainers at home. And they'll be quite selective about whether they use the power meter from their cranks, so from their team bikes, or the power meter from their turbo trainers. It would make sense to use their crank-based power meters. It's the numbers that they'll be used to on a day-to-day basis. And but from day one, Jimmy Whelan said that he measured his effort on both power meters, and there was only a 1 watt difference between them, which is really encouraging to see. And but with the development of e-racing, it's just going to be fascinating to see how things pan out. Like position on the bike, aerodynamics just isn't a factor. The riders are riding all on the tops, all in quite an upright position. No one's getting aero because there's just no need. But will we see it develop where riders become even more upright to push a higher power output out? And then also the bikes. What's the best bike for e-racing? And I spoke with a good friend of mine who manufactures bikes, and he said actually a steel bike, a heavy steel bike, is your best bet just because of the rigidity of it, so you wouldn't be losing anything through flex. Now the bikes that we're riding, they're made to be as rigid as possible whilst being comfortable to ride, so soaking up a little bit of vibrations from the road. But then also the weight is a huge weight, and aerodynamics is a hugely important aspect. So you're looking at all these features, whereas e-racing, all you're looking at is the rigidity of the bike, because you just want it as stiff as possible so that every pedal stroke you put out, every single bit of power gets transferred straight into the turbo trainer behind. And we're seeing a few actually, whilst I'm on that, we're seeing a few turbo trainer manufacturers develop full bikes, which again would up the game again, because they're just designed purely for online racing. So instead of losing any power and drivetrain efficiency, the power that you're putting out is transferring direct into the pedals. So this really is a new age of online racing, and it's going to be fascinating to see the equipment developments and how that plays out and what advantages that can give some of the riders.
Yeah, the pace of development is as steep as this final finishing climb through to the finish of the Digital Swiss 5, with Rohan Dennis controlling at an advantage, which is now just smidgen over 100 meters. 120 and 130 meters is the lead for Rohan Dennis at the head of affairs. His output is nudging around about 6 watts per kilo, just below, just over. Similar sort of output from Nicolas Roche. Look at that for a contrast in expression, though. As we look at Rohan Dennis, impassive and seemingly fully in control of his effort. Meanwhile, Nicolas Roche is turning himself inside out to get on terms with the Aussie. The Irishman wants to get up there, wants to make it 2 wins from the week, but so too does Rohan Dennis. Can anyone match that achievement of Stefan Kung in taking 2 wins on the week? Well, Roche is now within 100 meters, hits a little section that is to his advantage, and he is starting to get up there. Is it too little, too late? Can it possibly happen for Nicolas Roche as he races towards the finish line? Quite a way to go now yet, but still, well, what, 34 kilometers into this event, with 37.8 the destination, and Rohan Dennis managing his effort, but can he hang on to this 100-meter advantage?
Could be I didn't see this one coming, but it looks like Roche is Roche catching Rohan? Is that what we're seeing on the map?
He's closed up for sure. It was, what, well over 200 meters when they started the descent up the Luc Manier pass. Of course, it was honours even then down that descent for quite a while, and showing it sort of 400-500 meters. Then they hit the bottom of the hill, and it's stabilized to around about 150. And then since then it's come down. It's starting to shrink down, but it's for just ever so briefly while Roche was on one of those little plateaus and Dennis was still climbing. It was showing it around about 94, 95 meters. It's gone back up, I can tell you, to just about over 150 meters. So it's yo-yoing a bit because of the different natures, the different stages of gradient that they're on. But Roche is certainly closing up a little bit. He's now hit that fast section. Rohan Dennis is going to hit the ramp again, but it looks as if Rohan Dennis has a bit in hand, but is he going to be able to hang on all the way to the flag? The other question is, can Roche possibly sustain this effort? Because every indication from his body language and the appearance from the camera we've got in his apartment is that he is really making an absolute maximum effort to get on terms with the World Time Trial champion.
Yeah, Roche, I think once upon a time, Roche was a very fast finisher as well. I mean, this is a completely different kettle of fish when it comes to finishing as just sprinting off of a 1 hour all-out threshold effort. And what we saw with on stage 2, it was the battle with Matthews and Greg Van Avermaet. It was the case of who had that sprint at the end, and by the looks of Roche, I would be surprised if there's anything left there to lift that pace. He's just trying to get on terms with Rohan, and yeah, Rohan's got to keep an eye on it though.
Yeah, Nicholas Roche making absolutely no lifetime plans beyond the next couple of kilometers of his life. It's all about what he can possibly get. It's absolutely massive, and it's great to see, taking this incredibly seriously and pushing on to the maximum extent to get on terms, as Nicholas Roche is, well, he's over 100 meters behind Rohan Dennis. Rohan Dennis just tapping out a rhythm that is over 5 watts per kilo, but he looks so much more controlled, doesn't he? The body language is considerably different, but sometimes riders can almost betray themselves, can't they? Because he looks as if this is just a little ride to the shops. I'm sure it's anything but he's able to control his expression, control his output, control the way that he puts the power into the pedals, and just, you know, keep it as if it looks as if it's easy, but it's far from it.
Yeah, Rohan's one of the masters of controlling his effort and controlling his appearance. He said it after his win on stage 1. He knows that he often looks like he's suffering less than he actually is, and that's something that. And if the riders are watching this feed, they can really, you know, if Rohan's watching the screen we're watching rather than just watching his own movie app, he'll be able to see the effort Nico's putting in, and yeah, there could be an element of Rohan knowing he just needs to manage that gap, albeit that gap being just 76 meters at the moment. It's a slim advantage.
Slim advantage. He's in and under the kite, but is he going to hang on to this one? The gap comes down inside 100 meters. Could have a bit of a cliffhanger here. Down to 87 meters as Nicholas Roche just managed to overtake that cyclo-tourist, rings his bell and disappears ahead of him. But Nico Roche is, as you can see on your screen, putting out similar outputs, still managing, after almost an hour's bike racing, his 3rd top race of the week in this Digital Swiss 5, and he is, well, trying to get on terms. So it just slips back over 100 meters as things ease up a little bit for Rohan Dennis. In 3rd place at the moment, Jonas Vingegaard for the Team Jumbo Business Squad, Jai Hindley for Team Sunweb, and Chris Hamilton. They're packing well as a team, 3 in the top 5. This was a team's classification. I think they'd have that one won. Max Schachmann has slipped back a little bit, the German national champion, back in 6th place. Ben O'Connor, Ilnur Zakarin, Nick Schultz, Domenico Pozzovivo inside the top 10. But is anyone going to be able to get on terms with Rohan Dennis? You wouldn't put too much money on it. You get the virtual avatar explaining the difference and explaining the challenge for Nicholas Roche, because we've hit that little plateau at the top of the climb. It all eases up a little bit and goes towards the advantage of the man who has the lead of almost 100 meters. Rohan Dennis surely just has to take this one through to the flag. He's within touching distance of his 2nd victory of the week. He's going to neatly bookend this Digital Swiss 5 by taking the victory on day 1. Indeed, the finishing order of the top 2 is a mirror image of day 1. Nicholas Roche has given his all. Of that, there can be little doubt. Maximum effort. He's not willing to give in just yet, but showing it just under 100 meters removed, he's not going to be able to get on terms. What a superb effort. Inside the final 200 meters now. It's a cruise to the flag for the Team Ineos superstar that is Rohan Dennis. The World Time Trial champion has reflected his ability in perfect style this week, given Team Ineos 2 great wins on the week, and what a superb effort as he takes victory in the 5th and final race in the Digital Swiss 5. The virtual arms in the air, impassive expression from Rohan Dennis. He's delivered brilliantly. and managed to hang on for what would ultimately be a victory by just under 12 seconds from Nicolas Roche. Finally, he can ease the pressure on the pedals, as Jonas Vingegaard is not going to get on terms for second place, but it's been a fine podium finish. And a great result for Team Jumbo-Visma from the young Dane as he gets up for third on the day inside the final 50 metres, and Chris Hamilton is just a little bit too far back at this moment. Yes. Hamilton, though, is going to be caught with a late run. What about that from Max Schachmann? He saved something for the back end. Looked like he was out of it. And Schachmann charges up to the line. Gets up for fifth place ahead of Jai Hindley. Wow, what about that? Everyone can finally relax as the riders are coming into the line now. Zakarin will be in shortly. SCHULTZ, Matthias Frank, Domenico Pozzovivo all bidding for top 10 finishing position. There was nothing they could do about Rohan Dennis, who measured his effort to absolute perfection, and that's what you said, Alex. He's the best in the world at that.
Yes, he is. When it comes to pace and an effort, there's Rohan is what is the best in the world, and this Ruby is something that really shows that off. And we've seen of the 5 races, time trialists have won 4 of them, with 2 from Stefan Kung and 2 from Rohan, and that I think definitely shows that this platform leans towards a rider that can measure his effort and a rider that is not afraid to have a fight with himself in his own mind.
Well, Matthias Frank has finally made it through to the line. Great relief for the Swiss veteran as he's done his work for the day. He's home and hosed in a top 10 finishing position, so honour served by the AG Tour Le Mondial Pro, racing in the colours of Team Switzerland today. James Piccoli is about to complete for the Israel Startup Nation. The Canadian rider is through and at the line. They'll continue to stream through for quite a while now. Confirmation that the victory has gone to Rohan Dennis of Team Ineos ahead of Nicolas Roche. Jonas Vingegaard in third position ahead of Chris Hamilton from Team Sunweb. Max Schachmann ambushing Jai Hindley on the line for 5th. Ben O'Connor back in 7th position for NTT Pro Cycling. Ilno Zakarin in 8th. Nick Schultz in 9th. And Matthias Frank just about besting Domenico Pozzovivo in the bid for the final top 10 finishing position. Been a superb week of racing. Alex, I've certainly enjoyed it. How have you felt about it? I think we might just about be able to catch up with Rohan Dennis now, so we'll hang on and see if they've managed to put the telephone
Rohan
up to
Dennis,
the
congratulations for the
man.
win today. You're the man of the Swiss mountains, it seems.
Not without pain, I'll put it like that. Today was a lot harder than stage 1. But you know, I always had Nico to sort of, he was chasing me, and I could see that Schachmann was as well, and I just sort of, I went out quite hard and just sort of tried to hold on to it, and yeah, it wasn't easy, that's for sure.
Did you literally feel him in your back, Nicolas?
Yeah, there was. I was doing a lot of calculations, obviously down the hill, and seeing if I could take some time out of him on the slower parts, but he just kept going, and I could feel him coming, and I sort of measured my effort to what he was doing, and made sure that I just had a little bit left just in case he kicked at the end.
Thank you very much, and congratulations once more for the victory today. Thank you, Rohan Dennis.
When he made the calculations to absolutely perfect style. 12 seconds in the end, his advantage over Nicolas Roche. He measured it out absolutely perfectly. Jonas Vingegaard doing lots for his reputation for Team Jumbo-Visma in 3rd place. Hamilton, Schachmann, Hindley, O'Connor, Zakarin, Schultz and Frank rounding out the top 10. That was all about Rohan Dennis as we remind ourselves of some of the images from another great day of racing in the digital Swiss 5. It's a new concept, an emerging idea, but embraced by many, and indeed more and more with every passing day. The battle joined from the very earliest moments, 15-kilometer climb, and Rohan Dennis immediately goes to the front and opened up what would turn out to be a commanding advantage, and enough ultimately to carry him through to the end. So Rohan Dennis, as I say, bookends this great day of digital Swiss 5 racing. 2 victories as well for Stefan Kung of Groupama FDJ and Nicolas Roche. A victory and 2 second-place finishes for him. Great consistency from the team Sunweb squad throughout. So it's been a great week of racing. It only serves now for me to thank Alex Dowsett for his assistance during the week. It's been superb to have you along, Alex, and thanks very much for that. But, well, that's it for Digital Swiss Racing. From myself, Declan Quigley, we do hope to be back with some online racing in the future. But for now, it's goodbye.
Good.